I'm Callum, also known as Northern Dice, and I'm going to be infoboxing Euthia, Torment of Resurrection.
So, as I'm sure you're already aware, Euthia is a tabletop role-playing game that is heavily inspired by video role-playing games. So the game is built up using modular tiles, which all interlink together and have a certain orientation. And on those tiles you have lots and lots of different tokens that link to different events and things that have happened. There are, on the map at the minute, 2 characters which are midway through their adventures. At the bottom they've got some quests that they have activated and halfway through. And just here we have got the cards for the main scenario, which has not actually been activated yet for these 2 characters. But we're not going to give too much away about the scenarios. So, here's a playboard of a player that is halfway through a game. You've got their equipment and different parts of their inventory. Down the centre we have got the player's health, max health and current health. On the left hand side we've got the player's abilities and equipment. We've got their money, of course. Here are the player's different actions that they've got available this turn, the different tokens that will indicate things on the map, and right at the top we've actually got the player's abilities and different things that they're able to do. These are currently not trained in, but have been unlocked and are ready to be attached to the character. And just at the bottom you've actually got some cards which are used in combat when a player is controlling a monster. This is an example of what the map might look like midway through the game. Euthia is a very, very busy land. It's very exciting, but it's also very dangerous. There's lots of stuff going on, and there's lots of where your hero can be harmed. Just here is the church. This is where your character starts. It's the starting point of your journey. Because it is in the centre of this tile, it means that it counts as an extra place, an extra location on that map. So you have to move out of that to actually begin your adventure and move on to the next hex. And anytime you're on a hex that isn't surrounded by 6 other hexes, oh, careful, 6 other hexes, you then need to repopulate the map with new tiles, adding and expanding the world. As you can see, the characters have already been on their adventures a little bit, and the world is covered in tokens for the places that they have made use of. This is where Taisiri liberated that mountain and was able to mine. This is where both characters have been to the market and been able to sell things, and this is where Aiel has fought monsters and managed to liberate another area. Now the reason all these locations need marking with tokens is because once they're liberated, they don't need liberating a second time. The danger's gone, there's no reason to continue to try and fight things. It also lets you know which markets are available to be used because they've already been liberated. As example, this alchemist actually still needs liberating before it's able to be used by players. It also helps players track where they've been, and also lets everyone know who owes who money for using what resources. An example, if I take this token away, only Aiel has used this market, which means that when Taisiri is going to use it, she would have to pay Aiel 1 gold coin before she's able to place her token down to then be able to use it herself for free. It runs on the idea that you liberated it, so you have the muscle in that area. You'll also notice that on the map there's actually quite a lot going on, lots and lots to do for players. Lots of exciting elements for players to investigate, like treasure, portals to use to teleport, quests to complete from characters, monsters to fight, natural resources to take care of, and oh, sorry Aiel, knocked you down again, I'm trying to kill him I think. And there's the forests, there's lakes, there's mountains, locations with monster symbols on that still need to be liberated, and there's these gargantuan elementals which live in the land of Euthia, which can be quite detrimental or beneficial depending on which one you get. Some of them can do a lot of harm if you land on them, some of them can give you a big buff, but all of them will have an impact on you if you are in a surrounding square, as indicated by these arrows. What's more is that you can get affected in more than one location. In the example of where Aiel's been, just over here, where she was affected by both this earth elemental and this air elemental. There are some other unique tiles, much like the church where there's a point in the centre, and you may have to get some of these out for certain quests called legends. I'm not going to go into that too much because it could be spoilers for particular scenarios and particular elements of the game. This is what a starting character might look like. Aiel here has been set up for the start of a game. No new abilities added, nothing extra, straight vanilla. Each character plays asymmetrically, which makes it really replayable, but also means that you can play a character that will fit your playstyle best. What's going to add to that further is that all the abilities are unique and you don't actually have to have all of them at once. You can choose to have quite a lot of low-level abilities added in, or wait until you get lots and lots of high-level abilities. It's very mix and match, and it makes it really, really dynamic. And you'll know which one you've got coming up next because your reputation will match the token's image on the back, showing how much reputation they require. So all characters have the exact same setup for their equipment, but they all have one different hindrance. And for IL, in that example, it would be that she doesn't quite know how to put on a helmet, so she would have to be trained in how to use helmets. All characters will start with the exact same inventory space as well, and this can increase and decrease based on your equipment that you've got equipped at the minute. And should you require to remove one, you'd cover it with this token here. Players also start with the exact same actions available to them, as example here. And these enable players to mine, trade and fight. But they don't have to be used for that purpose. Instead, you can use them for their travel purposes of 1, 2 and 3 steps. But I'd have to use all these in one turn. I could choose to save one for the next turn, which is the reason I've got a second set. So let's say that I chose to not mine on a turn. I could then use that next turn for mining, or as the extra step again. So this center point is actually a health, and that can be increased and decreased. At the minute, it's going to be pretty terrible since you are going to be very spongy at the start. You probably will get very close to death a few times. But equipment and also gems can increase that and make it so you last a little bit longer, making it important to choose your equipment wisely. Another thing to help you as a player are these things, which are called Garl Tokens, which can help you in combat by increasing and decreasing dice value rolls. You can use as many of these as you wish in a fight, and you could give yourself a +2, +4, +6, +8 bonus, depending on how many you choose to use. Or you could even decrease your opponent's roll by -2, -4, -6, -8, should you choose to use it during their turn. So up next we've actually got the player tokens, which come in set colours based on the character that you're playing as, so you know who gets what. And they do quite a wide variety of things. These ones here show that you've used a natural resource on the map, such as mining or chopping trees down or diving into a lake for something. These, which are shaped like little blood drops, are used to track the damage on monsters, and they come in sizes of 1, 3, 5 and 10, which should tell you how heavy monsters can get. These are your market tokens, which show that you have traded in a certain area of the map, and these ones are your hero tokens, which allow you to show that you've used a resource on the map or liberated an area. It's generally speaking to prevent you from using a resource twice. Now all these things need tracking because if you've mined in a place, you can't mine there again. But again, like I said earlier, you'll have the muscle there, which will mean that people pay you money so that they can use it too, but they only pay once. So these are the first two of the shared player boards, the combat and reference boards. Now these are chock full of information and give you lots and lots of nice little hints, like when gems and essences can be used. They'll give you hints as to how they can be used and what sort of value they'll add to different parts of equipment. It also holds the church healing cards, which every player gains one at the start of the game, a pool of potion tokens for all players, and sack tokens to cover inventory spaces. And it also explains what you can do in the church and what happens if your character were to die and go back to the church by force. It also hosts She's Intervention, which is a buff that players can give themselves in the beginning of the game to sort of manipulate combat in their favour a little bit more. They can add one to their dice roll, they might even be able to gain a Garl token, or they can even increase their dice roll by 1 and add 1 damage. The other side of this board is the combat board with all the combat cards on it. This hosts the monster ability cards in silver and gold, and 4 silvers can be traded in for 1 gold for a big hit, and also handy because there is a hand limit of 5. You've also got your monster cards tiered in levels 1, 2 and 3. And at the bottom of this board you've actually got something nothing to do with combat. This is the resources and mining board. It's just this section here. So the first set is your mining tokens, which tells you what you get from mining. Lake tokens, which tell you what you get at the bottom of the lake. The cave tokens, which tell you what you get from sneaking into the cave and having a good adventure. And your treasure tokens, which will tell you what you will find when you adventure across the map. So the cards on the top left that I've not mentioned yet are used when you are playing with more than 2 players. These will determine who's going to control the monster for a combat sequence. So let's say you're playing as Tyceria, the purple player, and you get into combat. You would then draw one of these cards until you encounter a new player symbol. So at the minute I've pulled another Tyceria card and I can't control the monster for myself. And then it'd turn out that the wizard is the person who's going to control the monster for my combat sequence. Now these cards are going to be of no use to if you're playing single player, which is the reason there's an extra deck that has nothing to do with the multiplayer mode. which is from these cards. You draw these to generate dice rolls, and if you're really unlucky and you draw a 12, you know the monster's going to hit hard and you're going to have very little you can do about it, because it also tells you whether they use abilities or not. But in this mode, the premise is still the same. You are still trying to compete against the AI to defeat the scenario and win. The final boards are the market board and the scenario board. The market board tracks who is selling what at what time, and this can be changed through player manipulation, players buying things, and things being restocked. Merchants are not hard to find and are very, very common amongst Euthia. The Alchemist Lab is a little bit more rare, a bit trickier, and Dragonslayer Towers is a unique area. How hard these places are to find will determine how valuable the gear is that they sell. What else is interesting here is that all gear is colour coded, because having a full set will actually give you a big bonus and might even activate an ability on particular pieces of equipment which are called amulets, which are just here. Certain amulet abilities might require 4 or maybe 5 pieces of matching equipment, but the effect that when it kicks in is usually really powerful and really well worth having, so it makes it important to check what you're wearing at what time. The other thing the traders do in Euthia is enable you to activate, equip and train in certain abilities as you gain them throughout the game. The reputation track actually goes around the outside of the scenario board, and that tracks what abilities you have unlocked at what time, and also tracks your score in essence. If you're the furthest along at the end of the game, you win. It's as simple as that. Something else to note is that it actually has the books around the outside to tell you when you have activated or unlocked new abilities in case you're not paying attention to your ability cards themselves. The center point of the actual board, however, tracks the scenario itself and tells you how far along you are in the story. The scenarios run in rounds, and certain scenarios have certain amounts of rounds. So you'd always start on round 1, and as you go round, you might get to round 13 and then the scenario ends, or something specific happens in that scenario. So the progress between point 1 and point 13 might be making sure you are well stacked and equipped ready for when bad things happen. The other unique thing about Euthia is that it has gems in it that you can equip to armour to increase stats and give yourself a buff. We'd argue these are some of the best things to have in the game and have a big impact on gameplay. These can allow you to increase and improve your own abilities, and can even allow you to increase your inventory size and different abilities within. So these equip into equipment as shown here, and equipment has specific slots. In the example here, this pair of gauntlets can hold an opal and an onyx in their respective slots. Now these gem tokens are all double-sided because you can actually activate the abilities once per round in quite a few circumstances, as an example here with this blood token. Some are permanent and have a permanent affixture to you and a permanent improvement, but if this is taken off, this improvement is lost. When a round resets, all tapped tokens, or the ones that we've flipped in this case, are restored and able to be used again in the next round. As for what you'll be fighting, here are 2 examples of some of the monsters you might fight. Now, as I mentioned, monsters are tiered in this game, so you won't always encounter the same level. So you've got level 1 here, and level 3 here. Which you fight is determined by this symbol here. So that would be a level 1 monster. A level 3 symbol would be a level 3 monster. The bottom bit of the cards actually tells you what your reward is for defeating these monsters, and these bits tell you the range of their health, and the likelihood that they will kill you with their attacks as well. The monsters aren't as simple as that. They also, when they are drawn, gain attack cards, they also gain chaos tokens, and they gain Garl, which they are able to use when controlled by the player. And the bit at the bottom here shows you what output damage they will do depending on the dice roll, which is broken into brackets. And this monster in particular actually has an extra effect of removing 3 from all of your dice rolls. Bit nasty. Garl tokens work in the exact same way as they would for players, but because they don't have a wide range of abilities, they do have access to these really nasty, really hard hitting monster cards, which players pick up and are able to use in combat. These are held by players and chosen to use in a match against another player as a monster.
So as you probably gathered, Euthia is quite a heavy, dense game, lots of components, lots of things going on. But it all works and it all fits in really nicely. If you are a fan of a big, dense game, role-playing games, or you just like the look of this, I highly recommend that you check out Euthia Torment of Resurrection, which is on Kickstarter right now.